Hey, good afternoon, good morning. You've got Ben Benson here and Julio Moret. We're here to talk to you about Keyscaler as a service today. My name's Ben Benson. I'm the VP of Technical Operations here at Device Authority. So it's my job to make sure that our technology gets into the hands of our clients successfully and make sure everything runs smoothly. And Julio, over to you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Julio Moret. My position here is Director of Pre-Sales Engineering. So I'm supporting our customers and partners with all the customer-facing engineering activities. So I'm the guy talking to customers, getting requirements, and then putting together solutions for them to secure their devices using our platform, Keyscaler as a Service, KSaaS.
Cheers, Julio. Yeah, and hope you're enjoying the summit so far. There's some assumptions being made here that you know what Keyscaler is, and you know that it's our flagship platform to help secure your IoT devices using a range of different technologies and approaches to making those devices secure. What we're going to talk about today is Keyscaler as a service. So this is our full Keyscaler stack that we completely manage and host ourselves and provide as a service rather than the on-premise deployments of traditional approaches. So I'm going to jump straight in and we're going to talk about why people are moving over to SaaS for IoT security. And it's not really just IoT security. People are moving over to SaaS for pretty much all of their software services. And you can see from this slide, this rather wordy slide, that Gartner predicts that it will reach nearly 600 billion this year due to the market conditions, the fact that the IoT security market is much more dynamic than you would see in standard IT software solutions. And it needs to be able to be a lot more flexible and change with the different approaches that we're seeing with IoT devices and those sorts of businesses. On top of that, cybersecurity skills are still in short supply. It's been a growing need over the past 5-10 years, but still cybersecurity is still not at the top of the list of people's recruitment programs. So it makes a lot more sense to employ a SaaS model for this sort of function than recruit all of those skills in-house and need to rely on your own resources to manage those cybersecurity skills. And then furthermore, IoT device growth is huge. The way IoT devices and the IoT market itself is growing is vastly different to that of standard software or standard IT IAM solutions. You see any sorts of devices being adopted by the IoT market, and so because of the vast range of devices and the different ways they can connect and be used, it's important that the platform you use to secure them can be dynamic and can be manipulated and change in order to meet those different requirements. So by using a SaaS solution, you don't have to re-architect everything at your on-premise deployment every time you change. You can adopt new approaches, try new things, and the SaaS platform is there to move with you. So it makes a lot more sense. If we look at Keyscaler as a service, why we've gone over to a SaaS-based model for Keyscaler itself, there's several different benefits that it provides. I think, in my opinion, one of the most important ones is the time to production. Because you don't need to deploy your own infrastructure, you don't need to have the skills in-house and understand exactly what scale of servers you need or networks you need. You can get that environment up and running much, much quicker. You don't have to account for 3 or 4 months of deployment in your project to get those benefits. It scales with your business as well, which is much more important in IoT than other traditional industries, because the IoT devices tend to start small and then grow. People like to dip their toe, they like to experiment with new devices. And when you're doing that, you want to start small. And so with a SaaS model, you can have a subscription that is based on just your starting volume and then grow it as your device base grows and as your business grows. So you don't have that huge cost up front to deploy all of the infrastructure to start with. You can maximize the people and skills that you do have. Everybody's got technical skills and software teams in-house, but typically they're much more valuable to you if they're focusing on what concerns you, your devices, and not how to secure your devices and how to manage that platform, that security platform in the back end. So by having a SaaS platform, you get to capitalize on our people and our skills, and your guys can focus on exactly what you need to do. And lastly, it's a very robust and reliable platform. We follow lots of different frameworks. We're based on the Microsoft's well-architected framework. So again, you don't have the concerns of scaling up your infrastructure, deploying new servers, things like that. You know that it's always going to be there. It's always going to be robust and reliable. So clearly a lot of benefits from going down the SaaS route. I mentioned the well-architected Microsoft framework, and this is what we looked at when we designed our KSaaS platform. They say there's five pillars of a well-architected solution. The first being reliability, that the system has to be able to recover from failures, and we do that by having a globally deployed solution. We've got several clusters around the globe that all talk to each other and all work in tandem. And so if ever there's a national outage or an internet outage or any sorts of problems with the locality that you're working in, the KSaaS platform automatically falls over onto the next closest region and continues service seamlessly. So you'd never see that there's an outage in that particular part of infrastructure. Security is obviously paramount for us. The ability to be able to protect our applications from different threats is incredibly important, and that's a key concern when you're looking at a cloud-based solution, because you don't have the network cables in your hands, if you like. It's a hosted data center, and so the way in which we've ensured security in our platform is by isolating every resource we use, and every service we use is fully isolated from the internet. Clearly, there are a couple of services and entry points for devices and for administrative users, but everything else is secured on private networks. Even the infrastructure we use from Azure, such as databases and file shares and things like that, they're not accessible by the internet. They're completely isolated. So that adds another layer of security there. Cost optimization is important. You don't want to have 300 servers sitting there doing nothing. It's important that the SaaS platform itself knows how much load it's got and is able to maximize the resources it's got in the value they deliver. And we do that with a lot of different auto-scaling policies and understanding what devices are connected at what point, and some predictive analysis to understand what we expect to happen in the future and make sure that the system can automatically scale up and down depending on what devices are connecting and what sort of input they need. Operational excellence is very much a hygiene factor for me, as well as performance efficiency, the fifth one. These are things that don't really matter as long as they're there, but as soon as they're not there, it's a crisis. So it's very important that it continuously runs, it's robust and reliable, and again, performance efficiency, making sure that we understand what load is being put on that platform, and that it very quickly responds to that load and can understand when it needs to scale up, when it needs to scale down, and things such as geolocation, understanding where the most performant cluster is in respect to your devices to make sure that you're always getting the best possible performance. So although they're very vague guidelines offered by Microsoft, they're all very important, and we've taken each one of those into consideration when architecting our platform. Let's rewind the clock a bit to when we launched KSaaS in Q2 last year. It was a big launch for us. It took several months of research and development, and we launched KSaaS as I say, a very highly resilient and available cluster, making sure that it wasn't based in any one region. It was available to everybody, and being infinitely scalable with that automatic load management in there. And that takes quite a lot of thought and a lot of analysis to understand what it looks like from an applications point of view when we see devices connect and when we see that load ramping up. And so we put a lot of time into making sure we can monitor that, we can analyze it, and we can very quickly, or not us manually, it automatically scales up and down to make sure that it can handle all of that load. We launched it with a foundational feature set. We were very keen to make sure it launched with the feature set that is going to prove value immediately. There's no point in launching this sort of thing if it's just a demo platform or something to play with. We made sure that we launched it with everything we need in there to prove the value and deliver that value to our clients and our early adopters. So we launched it with our full certificate lifecycle management. As I'm sure you're aware, if you've seen any of our other talks, that involves securing your IoT devices with dynamically generated keys and certificates, and being able to manage the full life cycle of those certificates, renewing them as often and as frequently as you need. So every day, every week, every month, whatever suits your security posture, the Keyscaler stack can make sure the certificates are rotated in line with that. We launched it with our patented DDKG device authentication, which is dynamic device key generation. And that's really our patented technology that is the highest level of security to ensure the devices that are connecting are genuine, and you can be absolutely sure that they're authentic devices and they're not cloned or compromised or malicious in any way to your infrastructure. But we're aware that not all devices are capable of running that sort of software, and so we launched it with mutual TLS authentication as well. And that's a much more familiar, much more industry standard method of authenticating your devices with simple mutual TLS. So both of those were available at launch, as well as integration with all of the mainstream IoT platforms that we see our clients use. And that includes, Azure IoT Hub and DPS and things like that. To make sure that once you've got your devices onboarded to Keyscaler, the value really is in then securing that connection between those devices and whatever IoT platform you've chosen to use. So launching it with that foundation feature set, it immediately shows the value of Keyscaler and how it can really quickly be used to secure your IoT devices. And as a result of that, we saw some great market adoption. We're seeing the numbers fly. In fact, after 14 months, 15 months, something like that, we're seeing 30% of our client base are all now on KSaaS. We're seeing a lot of migrations from our traditional on-premise deployments over to KSaaS, mostly because people understand that it takes time and resources to manage that infrastructure in-house. And so by migrating over to KSaaS, you've still got the full feature set, you've still got all the power of Keyscaler, but your internal technical guys and your software teams can focus on your devices and not the Keyscaler infrastructure. We're seeing a lot of our partners have R&D environments because they tend to work with IoT startups that like to dip their toes in different device groups and things like that. It's really helpful to have an R&D environment just sitting there ready to be used as soon as you've got a new device type. It means you can really quickly evaluate a device or an approach or a method of securing it without having to go through the rigmarole of getting it signed off or authorized or things like that. And really looking at the main driver as to why we're seeing so many people migrate over to KSaaS, or why we're seeing such a great adoption of the SaaS model, it really is speed of deployment. It makes it a lot easier for people just to jump in there and get an environment up and running as soon as they need it.
I have a quick question, Ben. So you're saying that we're able to speed up the development and also streamline the deployment of IoT solutions. So in your experience, how long it takes to create or deploy a new tenant for a customer?
Yeah, it's a good point. I should have probably elaborated a bit more on that. You're right, Julio. Yeah, it's yourself, an on-premise deployment, the traditional method we were doing kind of 18 months ago, 2 years ago, anywhere between kind of 2 months and 6, 9, 12 months sometimes even to get an on-premise deployment out there, purely because of the overhead of the governance processes, getting servers signed off, things like that. With KSaaS, we're seeing it in as little as 5 working days. It really can be that quick, and the difference is staggering. Once we know what the requirements are, a couple of conversations, the environment can be deployed just like that, and the clients can get straight to testing. So you're comparing 5 days to 5 months, maybe something like that. It's a huge difference.
Yeah, and they're not compromising anything. I actually think in some cases they are getting a more robust infrastructure. You mentioned that we are following the well-architected framework, but not just that. We can provide redundancy, resiliency, geo-redundancy. So if one region is down, we can switch over automatically. It's a seamless transition. And also the performance. So if a device is connecting the East Coast, it doesn't need to go to the West Coast, right? Infrastructure to get access. So it will improve latency and performance and the overall experience, right?
Exactly, that's right. And that's one of the perks of the Azure Global Traffic Manager. That's a really clever bit of kit that understands the request that's coming in, and normally it will send you to the closest cluster to you, but it also knows the performance of each of those clusters. So if the closest one to you is under heavy load or is scaling up at the moment or in the middle of a process, then it will send you to the most performant cluster around the globe for your use case. So it's a really intelligent way of routing traffic.
So our customer can take advantage of this type of advanced cloud features with KSaaS out of the box.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and you just can't do that on an on-premise deployment. I mean, it's just unrealistic.
Right.
And if we're looking at the speed of deployment, I think we've got a case study coming up just next, which is one of your clients where speed of deployment was key. I think let's have a look at that.
Yes, this is a very interesting use case where we have a customer who is creating solutions for large venues. So here we're talking specifically about a sports arena, where they have basically it's like an environmental sensor that they say they can smell, see, listen, which basically has a air quality sensor, can do temperature, humidity, also sound sensors, collect all that information, send it to the cloud, and now the team that is managing the venue can get a very useful information that can be employed to optimize maybe power consumption by adjusting the HVAC system based on amount of people, temperature, inside, outside. Also for security, right? If you see or detect uh, maybe a risk level of air quality, you can take measures, right, to avoid any impact to the patrons attending the venue. So that's the use case. When they come to us, they were concerned about, all right, I have this device and I need to find a way how to scale. And not just that, I need to find a way how to securely manage the identities and credentials for these devices. So we are using certificates as the credential for that device to authenticate and connect to the Azure cloud. And also the certificate is used to create tunnels between the IoT device and the application or the endpoint that is processing, sending, receiving the data. So with KSaaS, we can have policies that will automate the provisioning, the registration, and the rotation of those certificates automatically for the device and also for the cloud. So we are keeping the credentials in sync between the Azure IoT Hub and the device to avoid any interruptions and also to have the mechanism to rotate those credentials over time. So overall, the benefits are we are making the time to value faster by streamlining the deployment of these solutions. So before they had the concern, okay, how do I onboard 2,000 devices, right, to the Azure cloud without having humans generating keys, putting the keys on the device, creating a new things in IoT Hub, which is very labor intensive. So with KSaaS now, all this process can be automated without any human intervention. So you already mentioned you can optimize the people that are working at your company and be focused on the use case. So we can offload that burden related to cybersecurity and do it with a platform. So again, we can streamline the device security by managing all the devices' identities automatically. So the next slide shows a high-level architecture of how these different components work together. So you see on the left side, that's the device. In the middle is KSaaS. And on the right side, you can also see Azure, right? Azure here is represented as a one single thing, but underneath that icon, there are multiple services. So it could be DPS, which is the device provisioning service from Azure. We have connectors that allow us to provision and create devices using certificates into the DPS service. Could be IoT Hub as well. So that will be the endpoint where all these connections are coming in. That some customers are using Azure Key Vault, right? Or they may be using ADCS or other things that are in the Azure ecosystem. So we have multiple connectors and integrations that allow us to leverage all the services that Microsoft had created to support IoT use cases. So everything starts, if we start from the left, with the device registration. So the device will connect to Keyscaler. Using DDKG, we can verify and make sure that this is an authorized device that can connect. When that validation is complete, then we proceed to the generation and signing of that certificate. Then we talk to the cloud. We create a new thing. We pass the certificate information. And the last step is to send the certificate down to the device. So you see at the bottom that green line. So that's to represent that after we send the certificate, the device can establish a secure MTLS connection. It's a mutual TLS because the device trusts the Azure endpoint, and Azure trusts the device because Keyscaler previously was able to pass that certificate information. Another use case that they're exploring is the SBOM assurance. So you see at the top right, the SBOM repository. So what we do, we can generate SBOM using our agent, and then compare that SBOM with the original one that was generated at the moment of manufacturing. So if we detect an issue, then we can raise a flag and say, hey, we detect an anomaly here. What do you want to do? You want to quarantine or report another system? Or just simply by policy, we can revoke those credentials and block access. So depending on the risk level, we can have logic on KSaaS to make those decisions on the fly. SBOM is becoming a requirement now. As you know, the White House, they released a executive order a couple of years ago that is aligned to the new cybersecurity initiative by the federal government that is asking vendors to provide SBOMs for each device that contains software, right, that is sold to the federal government. So now we are taking a step further with our vision of having a mechanism that can detect changes by generating SBOMs, detect changes in the maybe dependency or software packages, and reporting back that information using Keyscaler and other integrations that we have with external systems.
Yeah, I think that's it's really interesting how that SBOM feature has grown, isn't it? Because I mean, in my opinion, it's not a particularly sexy feature looking at SBOMs, right? Looking at bill of materials, but it is mandatory now. Well, very soon it will be mandatory. And the fact that you have to provide that SBOM it's almost a burden on the platform. But the way we've taken it and turned it into a continuous assurance piece means that you actually get value out of it as well. It actually gives you, it's not just to tick a box and say, yes, we've got an SBOM. It's to say, we've got an extra layer of security here because we've got an continuous SBOM. Right. So I think that's turned into a really interesting feature. So talking of feature evolution, what's KSaaS looking like today? Since we launched it and since we've had this adoption and the market uptake, we've put several additional features in there. We've built a single sign-on feature in there so that we can manage users and administrators in a lot more of a seamless manner. It's a bit of a chore if you've got admin users that are on a disparate system, people join and leave the business. You want to be able to manage that seamlessly. So we've got single sign-on for most of the main directory platforms out there now. We've enabled our secure repositories feature, which is a really useful feature that allows you to, it's effectively a storage bucket for any devices that are authenticated with Keyscaler. So now you can start sending assets, any arbitrary asset, down to your devices or configuration files, things like that for external platforms, and have it managed with Keyscaler. We've got a whole bunch of external CA connectors, which opens up a lot of different possibilities. When you have a Keyscaler environment, you get unlimited private CAs. You can create a CA with a few clicks and do it as many times as you want. But we're aware that a lot of people have external CAs or public CAs they want to use. So we've got these connectors now that go out to these public CAs, which mean you can roll those external CAs into your Keyscaler workflow, which is really powerful. And Epic integrations. Epic is our platform integration connector. And we use that to integrate with pretty much any third-party platform, such as Azure IoT Hub or DPS or things like that. But now we've rolled it out to a few more. We've got AWS IoT Core in there. We've just deployed the PTC ThingWorks connector in there. And we're doing more and more every month. We're rolling out new integrations to new platforms to make sure that we can cover the whole of the market. Another interesting element that we've deployed recently is our Keyscaler Academy. That's a single one-stop shop for all of our user guides and tutorials related to KSaaS. And really, that's only possible because we've now got this unified SaaS platform. When we had lots of different on-premise deployments, the docs that we were provided and the tutorials we had to give were specific to that environment because it was so different from the next one. But now that we've got this consistent, unified platform, we've got a single repository for all of our user guides, tutorials, bits of software that you want to download, templates, things like that. And we're very much taking the approach that is driven by the community. We're understanding what questions are being asked by our clients, what's the next thing they want to learn about, and that's how we're growing that academy and that repository. It really does enable self-service. People can do the vast majority of what they need to now on Keyscaler on their own with their own self-support. And in a similar vein, the ROI calculator is also enabling kind of the self-awareness and self-service aspect of using KSaaS, because what we've got is an ROI calculator on our main website. I think it was updated last week to have this calculator on. So before you even touch Keyscaler now, you can tap in some of the details of your project, and it will give you an exact number of what percentage you can expect to save, what sort of ROI you can expect to get from deploying a KSaaS platform. So again, it's great for self-research. It means you don't have to go through several different sales calls and conference calls to understand exactly what benefits you're getting. And I think probably the most significant and the most exciting addition we've got on the KSaaS platform is our edge to cloud model. And this is unique to the market. There's nothing else on the market that's got this. This is using our Keyscaler edge gateways that are deployed on premise or on device anyway, in your device network, but can still connect to KSaaS as a cloud platform. Now that it seems a little bit counterintuitive, having an on-premise gateway connecting to a cloud service, but what it means is that you're getting all of the benefits of the SaaS-based model, and you can apply that to devices that don't even connect to the internet. So if you've got a very private network with devices that are air gaps, that are government devices, or heavily regulated industries where those devices aren't allowed to connect to the public internet, we can still now manage those with Keyscaler and make sure we can secure them. And we do that by having a secure network ingress from our Keyscaler Edge to Keyscaler Essential, which is KSaaS. And that opens up so many more possibilities for the different use cases we can accommodate.
And Ben, can you expand a little bit more about the external CA connectors? Does that mean that, let's say, for example, I have a subscription or I have my own CA, and I use that to sign certificates using KSaaS?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's the way it can be used. There's a million different ways it can be used. If we look at the very simple case of using a Keyscaler CA, and as I say, you can have unlimited private CAs in Keyscaler, then that's the CA that signs your certificates and sends them out to your devices. As soon as we start connecting externally, you can use a CA that's anywhere. You can use a public CA. There's quite a few out there: VeriSign, Entrust, DigiCert. All of those sorts of connectors and CAs are out there. So you can now get your certificates signed by those public CAs outside of the KSaaS platform, and then still have KSaaS manage the certificate renewal and delivery and the whole workflow process of getting those certificates down to the device. So it opens up a lot more possibilities for which devices can be accommodated.
Good.
A case study.
I think this is me.
That's you. That's you.
So yeah, the last box that you had in your previous slide shows the hybrid type of deployment, where you have KSaaS in a component that is living at our customer's premise. So that component is Keyscaler Edge. So this is a company in the medical sector that manufactures sterilization for surgical products. So it's a basic autoclave that now they're connecting to their applications where they can get telemetry information, and from there have a better preventive maintenance strategy, get information about the status of the device, and you name it. Now this is a connected device. So when you connect device, now you have wider or a larger attack surface, and you need to find ways how to protect those devices. So they took the right approach. One of the things that they are implementing is a zero trust framework, where these devices needs to have its own identities. These identities are in a form of its finance certificates, and its finance certificates are the credentials that will be used by the application layer to authenticate those connections. So certificates also can help us to encrypt the data that is exchanged between the device and these servers or applications. So why they ask Keys Device Authority to provide a solution for offline environments? As you know, hospitals, they have very secure networks that typically they don't go outside their own premises, right? So the requirement was to have a mechanism, a way how to register devices, rotate certificates, revocate certificates, even if those devices don't have connection back to Keyscaler. So that's where we have Keyscaler Edge. If you go to the next slide,
Sure.
at the customer location, so you see here on the left, the hospital, everything starts from the connected medical device. Then you see the line going to Keyscaler Edge. So Keyscaler Edge is running on-premise and can operate in an offline mode. So that means that new devices can register, they can get new certificates, and those certificates can be rotated automatically based on policies that you have in the Keyscaler Edge service. So between Edge and KSaaS, there is a connection there, but that connection is optional. So for sites that never have internet connectivity, that's fine. That location can operate offline forever, but they may have situations where this connection can be established, right? So Edge can talk to Central, and that will be an opportunity perhaps to exchange information about what happened at the hospital, right? So Edge can send logs back to Central. Central can maybe send new configurations and new policies down to Edge. So we have that flexibility. So Edge can be operating offline forever, or could be in an online or intermediate communication with KSaaS. So that's when we refer to a hybrid configuration. That's when we have a component, again, that can run offline or could be online if that connection is available. On the right side, you see Keyscaler connected to our customer's device management cloud. So with this connection, we're able to exchange information about the certificates that are being provisioned by Keyscaler Edge, and also send information about the authorization status of those specific device. At the bottom, you see the CA. So in this particular case, the customer is using the built-in private CA that comes with Keyscaler. But as Ben mentioned before, we can also interface and connect to our customer PKI or public CA if they want to.
And it's a fascinating model, isn't it? If we look at this connection between Edge and Keyscaler, the fact that, as you say, that connection it's optional. You don't have to have that always on connection to the internet or the cloud. And I was just trying to figure out in my head how we'd achieve this without Keyscaler Edge. And I think what we'd end up having, you'd have the full Keyscaler stack in the hospital. So several servers, several databases in the hospital running there. And then how are you going to get those certificates out to your device management cloud? I imagine we're talking about a human with a USB stick, aren't we, or something like that? Or knowing healthcare, it might even be a floppy disk, and then people running back and forth. So the fact that you can enable this connection whenever you need it, or not at all, really means that you don't have to have all of that manual process in there.
Right.
Yeah, I think the edge to cloud is going to be a lot more popular going forward. So part of the KSaaS platform, as I say, we work very closely with Microsoft, taking their guidance and their frameworks to build the platform. And part of the collaboration we have with them is the marketplace deployment. The first thing we deployed on the marketplace was our instant free trials, and I'd encourage anyone that's listening to this to go over to the Azure Marketplace and have a look at KSaaS on there. You really can deploy with a single click. There's no upfront costs. It's an instant free trial, one click, and you'll have your own fresh KSaaS environment up and running, and you can go in there and have a play with it. There's lots of different test devices and templates and images that you can use, things such as VMs or Raspberry Pis, things like that. And then you can really see the full power of Keyscaler without any upfront investment at all. Hand in hand with that kind of self-serve free trial is the user portal that I mentioned earlier, the KSaaS Academy. So that takes you through step by step everything you need to do to understand where all the value is in Keyscaler and how to get your devices connected, which SDKs you might want to use on different devices, or even the pre-built agents are all available there as well. So you can have an instant free trial, download a pre-built agent, and you can be up and running within hours. It's really powerful to be able to test the waters and see the power of it.
So Ben, that means that our customers after this session can go create a new account and have a free trial?
Absolutely, I'd encourage everyone to do so. Once you do that free trial, you get a 30 days completely free of charge, no credit card, nothing like that. You get 10 device licenses included in that, so you can really test out how different devices work and how they can be onboarded.
All right.
It's really powerful. And then once you've seen that power and you can understand the value there, obviously you're going to move over to the subscription model. And what we've recently launched on that is our paid-for subscription through the marketplace. Now that sounds like a pretty insignificant feature, but what that means is that all of your subscription cost for Keyscaler is rolled into your normal Azure account. So you don't have to onboard a new supplier, you don't have to go through governance processes and get invoices signed off. It's all just bundled in with whatever you pay for Azure at the moment. And in fact, if you've got an existing Azure commitment, which a lot of people do, a lot of Microsoft accounts are set up to say, I commit to this much Azure usage this year. And when you've got that, that's then going to be offset. The Keyscaler cost can be offset against that commitment. So you're getting benefit twice, really. It makes everything a lot easier, a lot more seamless, a lot less accounts and lawyers to deal with. Right, let's go back to another case study. Let's look at your industrial IoT.
Yes, and this is my last use case. Okay. I left this one at the end to talk about scale, which is one of the biggest headaches for architects and people that are building IoT solutions. So you have your device, you have your application and dashboard, you have maybe a few hundred of devices, and you're ready to ramp up, but you don't know how to do it, right? So that's where we can come in and help our customers in that process of scaling up and do a seamless transition where we can bring automation for the device and data trust of their solutions. So the use case is based on Azure IoT Edge. So they have edge gateways at different locations. So this is an oil and gas company. And these gateways are connected to sensors and monitoring mission critical infrastructure and sending that data to the Azure cloud. So when you are talking about maybe 100 devices, this is something that could be managed maybe by humans, right? You can generate credentials, you can create records or manually, and that's okay. But when you are thinking about maybe thousands or hundreds of devices, that's where you need to bring automation. And Keyscaler is helping them to grow and ramp up this deployment. So Keyscaler, again, allows them to securely enroll these devices into the DPS, so the device provisioning services, using certificates, and do the ongoing lifecycle management. So if we go to the next slide, Ben, we can see here the architecture. On the left side is the Azure IoT Edge Gateway. In the middle, Keyscaler. On the right side, Azure. As you know, Azure IoT Edge requires two different certificates. The Identity Cert is the first one that is used by the gateway to connect and authenticate to IoT Hub. The second certificate is called the device CA, which is a signing cert or sub CA that lives in the Azure IoT Edge runtime. So that sub CA is used for security modules and internal communication between the gateway and also leaf devices. Keyscaler is able to provision and manage multiple certificates based on policies that you have on KSaaS. And we, again, are automating the whole process thanks to our agent that is running on the gateway, KSaaS in the cloud as the orchestrator, and the integration with Azure to have a complete end-to-end solution. So the benefits here, again, to recap, is we're able to streamline the deployment of these IoT solutions based on Azure IoT Edge. We are also reducing the amount of labor required to deploy, manage, and operate these IoT Edge gateways. And the last one, we are increasing the level of trust thanks to our DDKG technology. So each device is fingerprint automatically and dynamically using the DDKG algorithm, which is based on the hardware entropy. And then we can verify the identity of that device using the KSaaS platform to make sure that only authorized devices can register, authenticate, and then get certificates that are going to be used as credentials to authenticate back to the Azure cloud.
Yeah, again, I think that's another perk of using Edge, isn't it? Keyscaler Edge. The fact that you can put that custom configuration, that custom config onto the Edge gateway to accommodate whatever use case the client wants. I mean, we can't change KSaaS. We can't change the global platform to accommodate a particular use case. But what you can do with Edge is make sure you've got the right modules on there to accommodate your use case and then exploit the power of the KSaaS central platform. It gives you that much more flexibility, doesn't it?
Right.
And I think I'm right in saying this case study was the guys that they left us to the last minute, wasn't it? As often happens, it's not just these guys. Often everybody knows that they've got to secure their devices, they've got to get it to their IoT platform, but then they think, oh, we need to rotate those certificates. How are we going to do that at scale? And that's when they pick up the phone to us. And I think, again, that goes to the testament of the quick deployment of KSaaS. If they picked up the phone at the 11th hour and then we said, right, an on-premise deployment, there's another 6 months on your project timeline, that kind of blows everything out of the water. But the fact that we could turn an environment around so quickly, I think that was particularly impressive to them, wasn't it?
Right. Yes.
Great. Okay, thanks, Julio. So a couple more bits on future looking. So what's happening in the future with the roadmap for KSaaS and what we're doing to innovate? A good one that we've got coming up very soon is our cloud HSM integration. For those that aren't familiar, HSMs are hardware security modules that are traditionally very hardened servers, hardware servers that sit in your estates, and that's where you store all of your keys, all of your sensitive data. And hardware that's configured in such a way that once data goes in, it's very difficult to get it back out, and it gives you that extra layer of security on all of your sensitive information. Now, deploying an HSM with a cloud-based model doesn't make much sense because all of your workflows and operations are done in the cloud. You've got nowhere to plug a server into. So that was something we didn't expect to be able to roll into KSaaS. But as it happened, one of our partners, Entrust, are deploying a cloud HSM solution themselves at the moment. They're kind of pushing the HSM market forward while we're pushing the IoT security market forward. And so at the same time, we're collaborating with those guys to make sure we can have a seamless all-in-one package whereby you can, at one click, and have a brand new Keyscaler environment and a brand new HSM as a service environment. So you're going to get all the benefits of that HSM security on top of your KSaaS environment. So that one will be out pretty soon, and that's pretty exciting, I think, that extra layer of security.
So Ben, that means that our customers, they can have full control of their keys, their secrets.
Exactly.
So the infrastructure that is signing the certificates.
Exactly. Yeah, it's about as close as you're ever going to get to having the keys on your hard drive in your pocket, on your desk. It's that extra layer of security to make sure that you've always got control over those keys or any other sensitive information that you store. Yeah. So really valuable. The next term really focusing on our ability to exploit the data we've collected. Industry benchmarks is going to be a really powerful one, I think, for a lot of our clients, because we've got a single unified platform with hundreds of thousands of devices connecting to it. We've got data that's in the same shape for all of these different use cases. And that's never been the case before. If you look at bespoke solutions whereby the automotive industry uses this solution and healthcare uses this one, that the data being in different shapes means it's not apples and apples. You can't really compare how the different devices behave. But now that we've got it in a single platform, in the KSaaS platform, we can really exploit that huge amount of data to look at different trends, different benchmark reports on how the market is doing, how different industries are doing. It means we're going to be able to say things like, we can do annual reports saying the healthcare industry is trending towards using this method of authentication, or this different approach is being used by automotive industries, or looking at different volumes, different rotation policies, things like that, and getting a really good idea of how different industries or verticals are using Keyscaler, and being able to aggregate that on an anonymous basis. No sensitive information will be shared, obviously. We're not going to open the doors. But it gives really powerful insight into how the rest of the market is securing their devices, so that everyone else can stay on top of those trends and that innovation. And then similarly, with all of that data, is what we call Project Minerva. Minerva is our internal code name for this new project, and it's one of the most exciting areas we've got at the moment. This is our machine learning project, whereby we've got a great team of data analysts and data scientists in-house that are looking at all of this data we've got and understanding what a typical device behavior looks like. And then looking at, is that a well-behaved device or a bad device? And understanding what flags that we can raise or what attributes you can detect in the data to predict how that device is going to behave in the future, or whether there's any warning flags there. And really, we can only do that because we've got all of this data, that full market reach of KSaaS. It's something that you couldn't do it with a couple of thousand devices. It really needs hundreds and hundreds of thousands of devices to be able to get enough data to train those models. So what we're doing at the moment is using all of that data that we've got. Our very clever data scientists are trying to understand what sort of algorithms we should be writing and what models we can train to represent what a device looks like in different states, risk, low risk, high risk, that sort of stuff. And then once we've got those baseline algorithms in place, we can start using what we call a semi-supervised model, whereby the platform will start telling us what it thinks the best movement should be, and waiting for our confirmation and our agreement that, no, you've read that wrong, that's actually a good device, or no, you've got that right, that does look like a malicious device. And then that model becomes a little bit more accurate every time we give it that little hint. And so eventually we get to the automated predictive analysis stage, whereby the algorithms are so accurate, they can tell us when they know a device is going to misbehave, or when they know there's a risk that's about to happen on the platform. And obviously everyone benefits from that value. So machine learning is a big buzzword at the moment. Everyone's throwing it around like candy. But really, this is an area whereby the volume of data we've got really lends itself well to training these machine learning models. And it's pure business value. Once you've got that automation in place, it's another risk eliminated, which is what we're all about. So that's a bit of a forward thinking. Market innovation. Keep your eyes on the Device Authority website to see how they develop. And I think we're pretty much there. Let's have a look. Where are we? Another 10 minutes or so.
Yep. Some questions, man, here.
Let's have a look.
Yeah, I can take the first one. So the first question: we use Azure DPS for provisioning our devices. Does Keyscaler replace DPS? Quick answer: no. So our goal is to augment the DPS service and automate the enrollment of these devices. So as you know, DPS, the main function is to assign IoT hubs, right? When you have multiple IoT hub instances, DPS can automate that process. So can tell this device goes to hub 1 or hub number 2. But you need to create that device enrollment in DPS. So with KeyScaler, we're automating the process of creating the enrollment and also rotating those certificates over time. So it's a real hands-off experience when you're using KeyScaler as the orchestrator of the trust between your devices and the Azure services.
It's like a DPS automation, isn't it?
Right.
Makes DPS even easier. Yeah. Okay, there's another question in here asking about the Azure subscriptions. I'm already an Azure customer. Can you tie a KSaaS subscription to an existing account? Yes. So if you deploy KSaaS through the marketplace, which you don't have to, we can deploy it manually as well. But if you choose to deploy it through the Azure marketplace, then all of that environment and all of the elements of that are tied within your Azure account. So you'll see a subscription in your Azure portal. You can manage it in Azure. You can stop or start the subscription in Azure, and obviously all of the billing and invoicing goes through your Azure account as well. So it makes things a lot easier than trying to sign up a new supplier or new invoicing processes.
Yeah. And the next question is, are there any industries or customer types that are better for KSaaS? Actually, no. Any customer in the industry is a good fit for KSaaS. However, based on my experience, there are some industries that are more conservative and they may not be like cloud friendly. But in the last couple of years, maybe the pandemic was the main driver to accelerate the adoption of cloud services. We're seeing more companies to be being more cloud friendly and willing to consume software as a SaaS solution. Ben, since you are the SaaS expert.
I think you're right. It's a question that comes up so frequently, and I've been right back on slide number 1. I was talking about the market trending towards SaaS-based models, and there is still that traditional way of thinking, whereby I want everything on my servers in my data center, and I want to be able to pull the plug when I want to. And particularly in very heavily regulated industries, whereby you have to know exactly which CPU is running which process and have that crazy level of governance over it. I'm seeing less and less of that. That is still a concern with some traditional IT or security teams, and the question is still raised. But once you really get down to the nuts and bolts of it, when you look at the business as a whole, I don't think I've ever come across a business in the past 5 years that doesn't have at least one SaaS service. And if you've got one SaaS service, you might as well have more SaaS services, because it makes everything so much easier. You don't have to manage all of that infrastructure, and you don't have to worry about the hardware going up or down or replacements and that sort of stuff. So you're right, those heavily governed industries do sometimes tend to have a reticence to SaaS-based services, but normally with a quick conversation, those concerns can be allayed, and it really is the way everyone's moving. What I would also say is, as you say, it's perfect for pretty much any type of organization. What it's particularly good for are those smaller organizations, those startups that aren't sure yet. They think they want to try something. They don't have the resources to invest. They don't have a 5-year plan. They want to try something for 6 months. That's particularly where KSaaS is really accessible for them, because there's so little upfront investment. And I think that's it. I think that's all of our questions.
Yes, they are. Great.
Well, I think that's been a great session, Julio. Thanks for joining me. I think those case studies are really, really valuable to kind of illustrate the different developments we've made and the different features of KSaaS.
No, thank you, Ben. I always learn more about SaaS with you. So thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure. Okay. Cheers, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.